Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That's just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning, my friends, and welcome back to the big radio show. Thank you so much for coming on board and joining us for this, our final broadcast week for 2024. Yep, just a reminder that starting on Monday, we will be off through the holidays, and all the way we'll be returning to the airwaves on Thursday, January the 2nd. So it's going to be a nice long break there. That is our normal holiday time that we take off on the show here. And usually I get to put my feet up and relax a little bit. This time around, though, we're going to be busy getting these stations all set up and everything else for our takeover on January the 1st down here in Homer for all the radio stations down here. So we're busy. It's going to be busy, man. We're going to take off Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, and I think that's pretty much it. The rest of the time it's work. So it's going to be an exciting. I might have to take time off in January or February just to be able to see the other side of the couch or something. I don't know. Anyway, we are going on today. Today is our last Wednesday for the year, and we've got a full boat this morning. Joining us in just a hot second is Representative Sarah Vance, who is coming on board to talk with us a little bit today about election reform. She was on not too long ago, but I wanted to really hit on this because she's got a hearing that's going on that we really need to be aware of and be paying attention to. And then in hour two, we're going to be talking with State Senator Mike Shower for his weekly visit. And we got a lot to discuss with him, including all the stuff we talked about yesterday with Brad. Tomorrow on the program, U.S. Senator Dan Sullivan will be joining us in the first segment of the show for about 20 minutes. And we'll be talking with him about what's going on in Washington, including the new Trump appointees, maybe the what's happening with the Arctic in a military sense. And if we have enough time, I'm going to try and get him to talk a little bit about the Jones Act, see if we can get an AKLNG angle on the Jones Act on that. And then Chris Story is actually coming on board to talk to us more about his fair tax plan for the peninsula in hour two. And so that's tomorrow. And then, of course, Firearms Friday. So it's going to be a busy week. All right, let's get on to it, shall we? And get things ready to rock and roll, since we got our guest waiting in the wings, and I got her up so ungodly early this morning. Let's do that. Sarah Vance joins us this morning to talk about elections and more. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Am I coming in loud and clear?
You're coming in loud and clear. You are ready, willing, and able. We're good to go, and we're ready to do our thing here this morning. All right, Sarah. So I wanted to spend a good chunk of the hour this morning talking about election reform in the state of Alaska. I know we touched on it briefly last time you were on the show, but this week it's important for a variety of reasons. So let's talk first and foremost about your hearing that is coming up. Of course, you're still in the majority until January when the new body is sworn in. So you're still controlling and chairing, the majority is still controlling and chairing several different committees, but you have a special meeting coming up. Let's talk about that.
Wonderful. I've been paying attention to the public and their frustration about the election. and not necessarily the outcome of the election, although we have our own personal opinions about what we would have liked to see. It's more about the process and what happened around election day, the counting, what felt like lack of transparency with the vote counts. How is it that there was a lot of winning, on election day, and then, a week later, a whole batch of absentee ballots come in and the vote shifted, right? So the public is really upset and has a lot of questions. And I decided to contact the Division of Elections, have a hearing now ahead of session, and say, let's talk about what happened. We have a lot of questions. And I told them, I said, the public is mad. I want you to know this. They're really mad. And we need to talk about the event of election 2024. Not going to dig into all kinds of future policy and things like that. We're going to talk about this election, what went wrong, and what they can do better. And I had an hour-long conversation with the division director, Carol Beecher, yesterday. I sent her some questions ahead of time and said, hey, we need to talk about this and kind of public expectations so that I want her to fully be prepared coming into the conversation. I told her this isn't a gotcha moment. This is about a conversation with the public. So if you have questions that you want to ask the division, please email my office so that I can be prepared for tomorrow's hearing.
Let me play devil's advocate for a second, because I know a lot of people have said that, well, we were ahead and then all these absentees showed up. And then is it really that surprising that when a batch of, as they're counting these things in batches, and absentees show up from a certain location or from a certain place, is it really that surprising that things can swing? I mean, it was always fairly tight, right? I mean, so just as a devil's advocacy point there, is that, one of the things you're asking them to explain, or is it, I mean, do we think that there's malfeasance or something wrong here? Or is it just people aren't thinking it through? I mean, what is it? What do you think?
It's more about the timing. Why didn't they post, the vote count every single day, so that there could be a consistent message going out about the count? Why is it that they accept such a large number of ballots after election day? I know the answer. That's in law. It's statutory that they're allowed to do that, right? But a lot of people need to hear that. They need to hear the full explanation. We need to have this conversation with the public so that there's a greater understanding, and just say, hey, what happened here? Why didn't all of the precincts? There was report on election night, the vote count. The public needs an answer. What are they going to do about it in the future? And right. There's no small answer to that, but I want to say, hey, ask them what happened that
right.
night.
Right.
I sent them a letter asking about the 113,000 Alaskans whose data was breached in 2020. What security measures has the division taken since that time to make sure that their data information isn't used, inappropriately in the election? Have they taken measures to protect that? So this is a conversation not about outcomes, but about the process and, really what they've done to help build voter confidence. And I told them, I said, it's very, very low. I want you to know right now. And, this is hopefully going to create an open dialogue so that we can provide solutions, because it's the job of the legislature to write and clarify law.
Uh-oh. We lost Sarah there.
Before we head into the legislative session.
Sorry, we lost you there for a second. It's the governor's job to do what? To clarify law?
It's the legislature's job to write and clarify law and to hold the executive branch accountable when they're not following it. So this is the conversation around that.
Right. Of course, there were a lot of other there was a handful of other faux pas that happened as well. I mean, we had a lost ballot bag that was recovered by a private citizen. We had the wrong ballots go out. We had mislabeling of parties. We had rewriting of initiative verbiage. And I mean, there was all different kinds of things. Are those all also going to be, all kind of the little stumbles that happened in this last election cycle? Are those all going to be part of this discussion as well?
They can be. You email me your questions, Michael, and I can ask them.
Okay. I mean, I was just curious because, it seemed like every other week there was a new news story about something happening or something coming up. The one that got me the most was, Bryce Edgman voted in the election and then realized 2 days later that he'd voted for the wrong judges all of a sudden, and went back and they discovered that they had the wrong ballots for the wrong district. So, and a bunch of people had already voted. And so, I understand it's a monumental task to try and, a state geographically the size of the state of Alaska with all these rural areas and small villages and fly-in places and everything else. But we do it once every 2 to 4 years. We need to get it right. And I think those are all questions that should be asked. That's for sure.
Absolutely. And I asked her as a director, I said, do you have a post-game analysis of the election? She said, yes, we do debrief as a division. We talk about what went wrong, what we need to do better. And I said, that's fantastic. We need to talk about that because Alaskans want to know if you're even trying to make improvements, because it doesn't feel that way when there's so many errors. I was very frank with her, but I want to make sure that this is a respectful conversation. We can hold people accountable and say, hey, you screwed up in a big way, but I'm not going to be a jerk. Let's talk about this so that together we can make the improvements. Because the reality is, I've been working on election reform with Senator Schauer for the past 5 years. And we still haven't gotten anything passed in the legislature. So, at some point we have to say, okay, let's not be hostile and belligerent about this. Let's figure out what we can do, what we can pass, and do it. I'm stuttering. I've been so frustrated about the fact that we couldn't get one simple thing like cleaning up the voter rolls. Right.
No, it's frustrating. And like you said, it doesn't need to be adversarial. It could still, but it needs to be, it needs to be strict and stern. It needs to be, we've got to do the job because you have a mandate, and that's what your whole purpose is to fulfill this job every 2 to 4 years. And then whatever you're doing in the meantime. But at the same time, we don't want to necessarily attack. So we want to do that. So, all right, Sarah Vance, first, before we go to break, when the hearing is, when and where, and how can we watch?
Tomorrow, Thursday afternoon, 1 p.m. It is on the Alaska Legislature website. It will be held in Anchorage at the Legislative Information Office. People are welcome to come in person and attend if they would like to, but it will be online.
All right. It will be online. All right. Representative Sarah Vance is our guest. We're coming up on the first commercial break. We're going to talk with her about some of the potential legislative fixes. We've talked about a few, but maybe we need to bring them back up because, again, as you mentioned, nothing's happened at this point, and we need to continue that discussion. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We continue with Sarah Vance right after this.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, Sarah Vance is our guest, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed at this. I keep trying to get her into the 7 o'clock hour, and then something always happens or comes up, and there's always a conflict.
Nobody believes you, Michael.
And then she comes in. What'd she say to me? You said, "You keep doing this to me," and I said, "I know." I mean, it's I'm not trying intentionally. I really
Sure.
intentionally to do it, but she's a good egg, and she came on board to do it. Again, I keep coming back to this fact that the division of elections, and again, not to beat up on any person or anything else, but I mean, you have one job, one major job, and that is to produce an election every 2 years, and everything else in between is to make sure that those 2-year experiences go off. And so when something like what we saw this last time happens, and I'm not necessarily talking about the reporting or the counts or the stuff coming in afterwards or anything else. A lot of that is just statutory and things that happen, but I'm talking about all the issues that happened this last election cycle, all the problems between the sample ballot for ranked choice voting and the wrong ballots going out to a different area. And, one of their key people in the in the Nome voting district in the Nome area, he steps out a week before election or whatever, and a lost ballot bag that ended up on the side of the road out in Anchorage somewhere that was later on reported. I mean, all these things are like, all these things are raising questions, like who's proofreading? How many of those sample ballots went out with the Harris name on it and then they redid it? I mean, who's signing off on all this? What's the cost of this? And these are pretty simple. The Mia Costello thing, she's a Republican, not a Democrat, and they had to reprint a page of the voter guide and send it to all the people in her district. How much did that cost? Who is doing, simple things like proofreading? That to me is one of the major concerns, because it's in the small details that we can see how the whole thing can come unstuck, Sarah.
Yes, I'm taking notes feverishly here as you're reminding me of all of the errors. I've been so focused on policy that my questions revolve around, the data breach, voter roll maintenance, the counting and transparency, audits, election security, that I wasn't focusing on as much of the whoopsies. I did talk about, the election night reporting. Why didn't that happen? What kind of accountability do you have when that doesn't happen? Well, that's a hard one right there, because you don't know that it's going to happen until it happens, right? I talked about the public expectation that on the ranked choice voting tabulation, that big reveal that they put on television, that the public expects to see the lieutenant governor and the division director on TV doing that announcement, because they are the face of elections. Am I right?
Right. I mean, they're the ones that are ultimately responsible, right? The buck stops here, so to speak.
Correct.
I mean, that's where it's supposed to be.
They weren't there. It was such a disappointment, and it really doesn't convey public trust. And I did tell the director, I said, it gave the appearance that you were hiding, and that does not build voter confidence. And no. She received the criticism well. She said, "Wow, I didn't think about it from that perspective." She goes, "I just don't like to be on TV." I said, "Hey, I understand. However, this is your job, and
this is part of it's part of the gig. You gotta step up.
Part of the gig.
Yeah.
So, hopefully with some positive and constructive feedback, we can see some changes. Yeah. This is the administration does have some plans for reform, which is good.
Yeah. Anthony says voting in general only works if the population agrees / understands that the process cannot be interfered with. The problem manifests when the appearance of malfeasance is there via archaic counting methods and a perceived lack of organization. Basically, until the process itself becomes efficient and transparent, the public will always raise its eyebrows. And I think he's encapsulated it in a nutshell. That's exactly right. Even the appearance of impropriety is enough to shake the confidence in the system. All right, here we go. Let's get back to it.
public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke show.
What? No, I'm a perfect angel. Just ask my mom. Just ask my mom. All right, welcome back to the program. It is the Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We got more coming up. Sarah Vance continues with us right now. We're talking about elections and more. So now we're on to the policy legislative side, and there's a lot of questions. I know you've dealt with some things. The first thing that I want to bring up, though, is I think one of the problems that's really, or one of the things that's really created this problem, or if not at least created, helped exacerbate it, is this automatic registration through the PFD. Automatic voter registration through the PFD. I thought it was a bad idea to begin with, because again, I knew at the time we were already having a problem with our voter rolls, and that was, I don't know, what was it, 8 years ago or whatever that this was put in place?
2016.
2016, yeah, so 8 years ago. That was right. Ever since then, the problem has really just gotten worse. I mean, just because you take a PFD and you have the eligibility to take a PFD, if you don't want to register to vote, then you shouldn't. If you're not planning on it, if you're transient, if you're out of state or moving or whatever, I mean, it's a real problem. What are your thoughts on the auto registration through PFD application?
I think you hit the nail on the head. This is part of the problem that really made a bad situation worse. This, again, came through a ballot initiative. And, I'd like to remind the public to be cautionary when signing these petitions for a ballot initiative, because what it is democracy, pure democracy, rather than utilizing our constitutional republic that allows us to have a full conversation through the legislature, where you as a public get to engage. We get to ask a lot of questions, the cause and the effect of what this would mean. And we didn't get to ask that question with the ballot initiative in 2016. We didn't get to ask that question with the ballot initiative of 2020 that brought us ranked choice voting. Now, luckily, that same process is what we're using to try to get rid of ranked choice voting.
Right.
But there are so many ballot initiatives that the left has used and to really stir the pot and create some bad policy. This automatic voter registration, Shower has worked on this his entire tenure and said, okay, if it's such a great idea, at least make it where people can opt in, where it's not automatic. They can click a little box if they want to register right there, but make it optional, because it's going against their right. Maybe we shouldn't be forcing people to have to register to vote, right?
Yeah, no, an automatic opt-in is, in business practices, it's illegal. That was a big court case years ago with AT&T, where they were automatically opting in people to a feature or something that cost them an extra $2 or $3 or $4 a month. There was a big deal over it, and they literally had to make it so that it was, because you had to opt out. You had to aggressively opt out of it, not to be part of it, because they know that human nature is to just, okay, whatever. But if you want to opt in, you have to check the box, or you have to flag the thing, or you have to click the yes or whatever. That's a whole different thing. This automatic thing is part of the problem. And you actually highlighted that, because you said there are some people who qualified for the PFD, but were not U.S. citizens yet, but are in the path to citizenship. And because they filed for a PFD, they became registered voters, which they're not legally supposed to be able to do, because they're not U.S. citizens. And so it's hindering their pathway to citizenship. Now they're trying to get it reversed. I mean, that should be an automatic red flag there, just because, wait, you didn't catch that they weren't U.S. citizens? That's a problem.
It's a huge problem, and it's unfortunate for those people who are trying to follow a legal process to become naturalized. We encourage that as Americans, and yet we are showing as a state that we're going to make it difficult. And that's not the message that I want to send as a state. The other problem is that when people register to vote, their mailing address is different than their PFD application. Remember that whole hoopla a few years ago that created so many problems, and people were registered to vote in the wrong precinct, in the wrong district, and there was massive confusion, and that creates problems on transparency in elections. Hey, was this person really qualified to vote for this individual? And like the previous question, if there is the appearance of malfeasance, it creates a doubt in people's minds and breaks down and erodes that public trust.
Right.
And then people don't participate. And it's usually
No, I'm sorry, you just broke up for a second, but I was just going to interject while it was quiet there for a second that, the thing with the PFD and the two addresses was that, just for people who don't remember, a lot of people, when they file their PFD, especially if they're getting a paper check, a lot of times they'll have it sent to like their place of business or a PO box. It may not be in the same area where they're actually districted and live. They have a post office box downtown, not in another area. And so that was causing a problem, because all of a sudden they go to show up to vote in their normal polling location and find out they're not registered to vote there anymore. They're in another district because their mailing address was different for the PFD. And that was a huge problem.
Yes. So, we've talked about this before, and we know that the solution is to opt in, not to have it automatic. That is one area that could clean it up, along with just scrubbing our voter rolls, reducing the number of years that it takes to place someone on the inactive voter list, so that eventually their voter registration can be canceled according to federal law. Right now, it's an 8-year process that the Division of Elections has to follow in order to remove someone from the rolls. And that it just doesn't make sense. Again, here I am stuttering in frustration that we couldn't even shave 2 years off of this process as Alaskans. But I think people need to brace themselves for this next session, in the fact that we have 2 Democrat majorities, and they have the votes to essentially do whatever they want concerning the elections. And it is my hope that they will choose to add extra securities that Senator Schauer and I have been advocating for, to be able to make positive reforms, but also make sure that our elections are secure.
This 8-year lag time, now that's baked into the law, right? I mean, that's baked into the Alaska statute, that timeline. Is that correct?
Yes, there is a timeline. According to federal law, you cannot cancel a voter registration under 4 years. So it's a 4-year turn. But Alaska law, we have extended it up to 8 years. So it's a process of someone moves to inactive, which kind of sets them to the side. It says, hey, we're going to take a closer look at them. And then they move to being canceled if they meet certain criteria. Federal law, 4 years. Alaska law, 8 years.
And I guess, is there in the whereases where all this was put in there, was there a justification for why they made it 8 years in Alaska? Because, I mean, 4 years seems like a pretty reasonable, that's one major, presidential election to the next. If somebody moves or dies, or, something changes, they need to move to another district. That seems like a reasonable amount of time. The 8 just seems excessive at that point. Was there a reason why it was stretched out so long? Do you know?
If I remember, the logic of the conversation was, or the justification is, that it would be 2 presidential election cycles, because some people only vote in a presidential election. And I see that Terry's saying that the Division of Elections told her that the rolls were scrubbed every 4 years. That's accurate on the federal level, when they can finally cancel a voter registration and fully remove them. But the other process, as I understand it, and I could be wrong, is that in order to move someone along in that process, it takes longer than 4 years.
So they have to be inactive for 8. I mean, if somebody dies and they're still on the roll 7, 8 years later, that's, again, that's part of the inflation. Because what are they estimating right now, Sarah? They're saying that we have our voter rolls are actually at what, 119% or something of what they think is actually the number of registered voters or alive and active registered voters in the state.
I've heard anywhere from 108 to 116.
Okay. So
but again, every year we have an automatic voter registration with the PFD, so that number fluctuates.
Yeah, it's a problem. So what are so we talked about PFD automatic registration and purging the voter rolls. You talked a little bit about security, added security, especially for those that suffered from the data breach. I mean, I'm assuming the state, I never got a notification or anything that my data was breached. So I'm assuming I never was part of that. Did they reach out? Do people know that their data was hacked or that it may have been exposed to the dark web? Or is it just kind of what's going on there?
Yes, the division did send out a letter notification to the people who were impacted, and they offered, coverage to help protect their ID, for a year. In talking with the division director about this, I asked her, why didn't the governor issue a cyber emergency? Because a few years ago, Representative Delana Johnson passed a bill that would allow a cyber emergency to provide the resources and response needed under this. And she said that it potentially did not meet the IT definition of a data breach, because it wasn't that there was a data breach. There was a loophole that was found through an open door, for instance, that the information was utilized. And I said, and now that door has been closed? And she said, yes. They are now behind the state system for cybersecurity. And I said, why haven't I been working on this issue since it first came up in 2020? Why is it that I've never heard that?
Right.
I said, we need to talk about that.
Right. Well, and yeah, Anthony continues to say, see, this is that appearance of malfeasance I'm talking about. The average Billy voter doesn't understand how the registration works. And when they hear a dead person stays on the books for 8 years, it starts to make their chap their backside. And that's exactly right. I mean, if they understood that people are on there for that long, if they understood how these data breaches work, and it, on a technicality, we didn't call it what it really was, which is, it's still a data breach, whether they actively hacked the system or they used an open back door somewhere, or it's still a data breach. It's still an emergency. Those people's information was still exposed. Why are we beating around the bush and splitting hairs on it?
Right. That's what I said is, hey, we have the public trust here that we're dealing with. And I am an active legislator who has regular conversations with the Division of Elections, and specifically wrote them a letter asking for information about what they've done to protect these Alaskans and from private information. And they didn't tell me that they are the measures that they have taken to be behind the state's cybersecurity, protections. And it's been 4 years. Why are we not having this conversation? And, I get it that they have a lot of plates spinning, but this, like the whole conversation that we've had, it's the appearance of the malfeasance. And then when you add a lot of the mistakes and the grave errors along the way, it really doesn't put confidence in the Division of Elections. So there's a lot of work to be done. I'm hoping that we can make some strides this year, regardless if we have Democrat majorities, because I believe that there are lawmakers that really want to do the right thing. They see it differently than we do. So hopefully we can encourage them that, hey, if they want to allow for ballot curing, that we need to make sure that there are security measures in place so that it is that individual who casts the ballot that is doing the ballot curing and not anyone else. And that's going to take multi-factor authentication, move away from the old school signature verification. Senator Kawasaki, if you are listening, if your staff is listening to me right now, just let go of the signature verification. It's old school. What we need is multi-factor authentication. You already use it when you order a pizza. You use it on your My Alaska when you log in to verify that your PFD application is going through. We already do it.
Yeah.
So why don't we do it with our absentee ballots and make that process to cure ballots that much simpler?
Yeah, no, I mean, to me, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, we're already using it every day. Why aren't we doing it there? All right. These are all questions that can be asked. Sarah, folks want to send you questions. You have an email address they can send questions to for your hearing tomorrow, 1 p.m.
Yes, rep.sarah.vance@akleg.gov.
Okay. And again, that's going to be available on the state website or on the Gavel to Gavel. Where's it going to be for people to watch tomorrow at 1 p.m.?
It should be on Gavel, but you can go to the Alaska Legislative website, which is akleg.gov, and it will have the daily calendar.
Okay. It's on the daily calendar. It'll be the meeting tomorrow, 1 p.m. Sarah Vance continues with us here in just a moment. We're going to continue with her. I think we'll talk a little bit here about if she's got anything else on elections to say, and then otherwise we're going to touch briefly on the budget, especially in light of what Brad was talking about yesterday. We'll continue the Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Back with Sarah Vance right after this.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, Sarah Vance is our guest. Anthony says, I use multi-factor authentication on my PlayStation to play video games, but I can just sign my name to determine the future of the country. Seems awful malfeasancy. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly the problem. These are things that we're so used to these days. I mean, how many websites do you have to log into now to get two-factor authentication? I mean, how many different things do you have to log into to make sure you get a text? I mean, I logged into Lowe's or something the other day to order something, and I had to get, two-factor authentication to buy a shovel, or something like that. I mean, that's kind of crazy. Why can't we do that for something that is as important as voting? And I know Harold's going on and on here about how there's really nothing wrong. Why are we talking about it? Well, because there is something wrong. When you've got people who've been on the rolls and Frank said, my daughter has been a resident of Arizona for 10 years. She's still on the voter rolls in Alaska. She's still getting, I mean, and how many times did we see on social media people getting, going to their mailbox or their post office box and getting 5-6 different ballots that were sent out in some of these areas. I mean, especially in Anchorage when they did the mail-in thing, it said some of these people, one gal was like, my son hasn't lived with me for 8-9 years and he's still getting a ballot here. Why is this continuing to happen? So this has got to be handled, Sarah.
Absolutely. People are saying, well, the division told us that the ballots are scrubbed, or the roll is scrubbed every 4 years, and I'm saying 8. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that I'm misquoting the 8-year time frame, but I don't think that I am, because when people have been living out of state for 10 years and they're still on the voter rolls, I think my 8-year number is accurate, and that shows just how broken our legislature has been and divided on this issue, that we can't seem to figure out how to come together and get this cleaned up and addressed and reduce this number. There's so many issues that seem very basic and nonpartisan. If we truly want free and fair elections on every side, we have to do this. One of the things about the absentee ballots with the multi-factor authentication is that we can allow for ballot curing. Maybe you forgot to add your birth date as a verifier on there. Well, you can track your ballot. Remember the ballot tracks that we did in the special election, the congressional special election? We can do that for absentee ballots, and you can make sure that your ballot makes it to the division office and is counted. And if there's something wrong, they could, and you didn't fill it out completely, you missed putting, your name on there or something, that they say, hey, this isn't complete, you need to cure your ballot, that you have time to contact the division before election day and do that. We don't have that ability right now. You don't know if your ballot has made it back to the division and is counted. And that would provide more voter confidence. But in order to do that, we not only need ballot tracks, but we need the multi-factor authentication so that you're the only one logging into that information and checking on your ballot. But that would create a great engagement for the election process.
When you mentioned, Terry just said, I received 3 absentee ballots for my deceased husband. If I was a cheater, I could have voted for all of them. Yeah, I mean, exactly. That thing where they say, well, we purge the rolls every 4 years sounds like one of those things where there's a sliver of truth, like maybe the actual process of the purge itself happens every 4 years, but the overall process may take 8. It feels like, and that again is another one of those, the appearance of impropriety is a problem kind of thing. Okay, so you're only telling us a half truth. It really takes 8 years, but you're purging it every 4, right? The whole process takes 8 years, but you're doing it on a 4 years. I don't know. The whole thing is just so irritating. You have one job. Maybe your hands are being tied by legislation in some ways, but maybe we could make it efficient in others. It just seems like that would, make the most sense. And again, you're right. Being able to track, I mean, I can track a package from Florida to Alaska every step of the way, from the time that they print the label on it to the time that it hits my doorstep. And I get text messages and everything else. Well, ask me how I know this most recently. Ask me how I know this. And if we could do that, I mean, with a simple QR code, you scan with your phone, it clicks up to your My Alaska app, boom, boom, boom. Your name is registered to that ballot. You know where it goes. If there's a problem, guess what? They reach out to you. That seems like that's a simple fix, personally. Quickly, sir.
It should seem like a simple fix. But as it proven with my last bill to clean up the voter rolls, nothing is simple in the legislature.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Sarah Vance is our guest. We'll give her final thoughts on the election stuff, and then we're going to move over to the budgetary stuff. And we will continue the Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all that stuff. Let's get to it. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
All right, we're continuing with Sarah Vance. One final segment here. I guess, Sarah, we'll let you wrap up with final thoughts on the, elections and what needs to be done. Election reform, this hearing you're having tomorrow at 1 o'clock. And anything else before we move on to a bigger question about the budget?
There is so much that we need to do on election reform, but the simplest is to clean up the voter rolls and provide multi-factor authentication for the absentee ballots, and really better communication from the Division of Elections. Better, clear communication will improve that public trust. And that's what my meeting is about tomorrow, is to ask the questions. What went wrong? What are you doing to fix it? Because like you said, not everything needs to come through the law. There's a lot that they can do themselves to be able to clean up the system and the way that they're doing things. And Alaskans are expecting them to do that. And unfortunately, they didn't meet that expectation this year. So what can we do to improve it for the next go round?
Yeah, no, absolutely. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about the budget, Sarah. Since we talked last, the governor has unveiled his proposal. I mean, it's not good. It's not looking good. I think Brad yesterday was advocating pretty heavily that the governor kind of failed in his duty because he's supposed to provide something that's sustainable and, balanced and sustainable, and balancing the budget on savings, whether it's the CBR or even whether it's taking it from the PFD, is not truly a balanced budget in the long run, because savings is a finite resource, or the PFD is a finite resource, and it's not sustainable in the long run. And we're showing multi-billion-dollar deficits. Even KTUU, the Alaska's news source, mentions in their article that the governor is going to take his plan takes $150 million from the CBR this year, and then for the proposed budget next year, it's going to draw $1.5 billion out. But that's just next year. There's only $2.5 billion. But at the end of 3 years, the CBR would be $1 billion in debt. By the end of 10 years, it would be $12 billion in debt. That's not a that's not a balanced budget. And although he did say during his press conferences that, they want all these things and how do we pay for them, nobody is asking. I mean, he could have put forward a budget that was truly balanced, and then said, this is your baby, you go with it. And it's a little frustrating to see that he wasn't a little more strident in that, because legislatures in the past, they've ignored the governor's budget, right? I mean, the governor proposes a budget and they go, oh, that's nice, and then we're going to build our own. They've done that. It's just, but the governor has the responsibility to at least point the direction, be that true north thing for here's where you guys should follow me. I'm the leader. And then the legislature can decide whether or not to do it. And all I'm seeing right now is about how much money we're going to be spending between BSA increase and defined benefits and, subsidies and royalties for the Cook Inlet gas and all this. I mean, it's hundreds of millions of dollars. We're already $1 billion and at 1.7 billion actually in the hole for this coming fiscal year. Are there any adults left in the legislature looking at that and going, that's bad?
I have a prediction for you that we kind of know, right? We know it's coming, is that they're going to use the dividend, because they've been leading up to this conversation for quite some time, and they don't feel that they're in error here. They think that was for the rainy day and to use for government spending. I think by the governor introducing a budget with a full statutory dividend and a significant deficit, I think he's pushing the legislature to change the formula.
So you think that what he's trying to do is to get them to change it to what? To change the statutory all the way around, to make it a 15-85 split, or what? I mean, to put it in statute and then say stand by the statute?
Correct. Whatever we need to do, let's follow the law, because that's something that he emphasized heavily in his press release, was that he was going to follow the law with the dividend, which is true, and showing people that it would create that much of a deficit. His first year, when he was first elected, he did introduce a balanced budget, and people lost their minds. Remember, it became known as the draconian budget. And
right.
we worked hard in the legislature to say, hey, we need to make these reforms, and we're going to stand by that. And then he ended up walking back most of the cuts that were made. And so here he's trying a different approach. And that is saying, look, here's a full dividend, and it creates this much deficit. So the legislature needs to figure out if they're going to cut something, or if not, they should change the formula, because we'll keep having this conversation over and over again. And, there's been a lot of talk about changing the formula since before I was elected. I mean, that's when people said Paul Seaton has to go, because he was proposing a 25-75 split with 75% going to government. And here we are back at ground zero again. And, I told people, I said, we have to follow the law. If you want to change it, go right ahead. I'm not going to be voting for that, because I don't believe that the formula is broken. But, we can't keep ignoring the law, because again, back to that public trust. It makes us look like we're above the law.
That's the thing. That's how you get an Irish democracy, is when you start ignoring the laws, or you create laws that are so ridiculous nobody follows them. That's part of the problem. But let's take your for instance as a given. All right, they'll take the PFD. The problem, Sarah, is that it's still not enough. It's still not enough. $1.5 billion deficits pretty much every year for the next 10 years. And that's with the governor's estimates on the spending was rosy. I mean, like it was the best possible, not a single really big thing added and just the slight growth of, I mean, it is rosy, $1.5 billion. And once the PFD's gone, what happens? I mean, who is going to be the adult in the room and say, hey guys, we don't have this kind of money. If you take the PFD, even with an increase in the returns or anything else that's going on, and that's even questionable. The permanent fund itself is not even matching what the market's doing right now. I have questions. I have a lot of questions on that. But even if it was, and it takes 5 years to consume all the PFD because it keeps increasing, there's still not enough in the long run based on the rate of growth. And that's before they put in more BSA increases or defined benefits or subsidies for oil, gas or anything else. So somebody's got to say, how do we pay for it?
Right. And I can almost hear Representative Ben Carpenter in the background saying, I tried to tell you. I tried to tell you. I tried to enact a plan that could help us. It wasn't a fun plan, but it would have turned every little dial along the way. He tried to get the dividend enshrined in the Constitution. And here we are.
Yeah. Try to spending cap, try to this,
right?
Set a sales tax would be part of a larger plan. I mean, he tried to do it all.
But I can almost guarantee you that one of the measures that the Democrats will try to push is instituting a state income tax. And that will be a fun conversation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's where we're at. I've been saying it for years. They're eventually going to say, pucker up, sweet lips. The free rides are over. Free rides die hard. It's time for you to pay your fair share, even though we have paid our fair share by them taking all of our PFD. That was our ownership stake in the state resources. And here we are. And there's no, that's the thing. There's no talk about doing anything different. The talk is all about how can we spend more? And I mean, it can't continue. It cannot continue. You want to know, they keep talking about outmigration as one of the biggest problems in the state. Want to know what's contributing to the outmigration? You want to know probably the number one factor in the outmigration? It's not retirement benefits. It's not this. No. It's not that. It's the cost of living and the fact that the private economy is in recession still for 10 years.
Yes.
It's because they don't care about it. 1 minute, Sarah. Go ahead and give us your final thoughts.
Well, it's going to be a bumpy year. Just brace yourselves. There's going to be a lot to talk about. But one thing that we have to keep in mind is that this is our Alaska. This isn't just the Democrats' problem right now with them being in the majority. This is for all of us to solve. And we have to make the hard decisions. This is not going to be a fun budget. But you know what? This is my state. And I want us to be a part of the conversation and the solution. Yeah. And man, it's going to take every one of us to be engaged and to understand the reality that we're facing. And it's not pretty, but tell you what, I have hope for Alaska and I'm not giving up.
All right, 1 p.m. tomorrow on the akledge.gov website. You can watch Sarah's hearing. Sarah, thanks for coming in. Folks, hour 2 is dead ahead. Mike Shower is our guest, The Michael Duke Show. Sarah, I mean, I'm like you. You're stumbling over words about the whole election thing. I'm stumbling over words about the fact that you could see it in black and white. And this is the third or fourth now 10-year plan that shows these deficits. This is not anything new.
Right.
$1 billion plus, really $1.5 billion plus deficits going forward. And again, that's with the rosiest spending outlook that you can possibly think of, like the lowest, like it barely adjusts for inflation kind of spending outlooks. That's nothing new. That's not adding
nothing new.
VPSOs or adding new this or new programs or bells and whistles or new education funding or anything else. That is just a bare bones budget. And yet everybody's like, this is fine. I mean, they're the dog sitting in the house on fire, drinking coffee going, this is fine. And
the other thing that Representative Ben Carpenter has talked about for years is stop relying on federal dollars to bail us out. And look what's happening now. We have the Trump administration with DOGE that is going to start slicing and dicing and creating efficiencies and starting to cut the fat. And what is that going to look like for Alaska that has come to depend? The large part of our budget is federal dollars. And we haven't taken the responsibility upon ourselves. We have to stimulate the economy, but we have to be taking a good look at our budget and finding where we can make better decisions.
And that's the thing. Here's the thing. You said it earlier. You said this is not going to be fun. This budget cycle is not going to be fun. What Ben proposed is not going to be fun. All I can remember is remember when Greece was having its financial collapse and everything else, and everybody was in the streets screaming about austerity. Well, it's either that it's get sick from the cure or die from the disease. Right? Either take the chemo, let your hair fall out, do whatever, or just die from the cancer. That's what we're dealing with, a cancer of spending in this state. And the cure is austerity, cutting back, making things smaller, living within our means, not adding new funding, and we just can't, nobody's, you and I maybe and a handful of other legislators kind of talk this way, but even a lot of the majority or the minority members of the caucus, they kind of get wishy-washy. They've got a track record in the past of being they didn't uphold the governor's budget during that. You talked about that draconian budget. There was some who are still in the legislature who are in the, the strong minority who didn't vote for it, who didn't vote to override. Somebody has got to be the adult in the room. I couldn't run my household this way. You couldn't run a business this way. The only way we can do it now is because they can take the money by force. But even when that money's gone, what do you do?
I think that there are people in the legislature who don't truly believe that the money will be gone. I really believe that. I think that they don't see the reality that we could put ourselves in debt as a state. I think that they believe that there will always be enough.
Too big to fail, right?
Too big to fail.
This is a problem at the national level with the Congress and their spending and just printing money. And it's obviously a problem in Alaska. We're too big to fail. Don't worry. We've got $70 billion in the permanent fund. That money will always be there. We can always vote to take more out if we need to. We've already violated the law in all these other ways. Why don't we just, if we wanted to, we could just do it. We could get a judge to order it. You got to pay for these services.
Well, there's money in the CBR. And they say, hey, if we need it. But I told our school district, I said, listen, this is going to be a hard budget. And all of the promises of your hopes and dreams are going to cost, and it will come from somewhere.
Yeah.
And that is not going to be a fun conversation.
We just watched it happen in Anchorage. They voted last night. They started off with 6 schools they were going to close because they have a declining enrollment. 131% increase in homeschooling in the last 8 years. 131%. They have a declining enrollment, fewer students. They started off with 7 schools. Last night, they made it 2 because all the parents got up and said, but our schools, who's going to pay for it?
Right.
Right? I mean, if you get a school that's half full and it costs just as much to stand that school up that's half full with people and maintenance and heat and light and power and everything else, when you could consolidate them and make 2 schools that were 85% full, or, combine 2 and make 1, why it's money. It's all about the money. You can't contribute any more in property taxes. It has to come from the state. So this goes back to the emotions, the emotional tie to that, where we're just going to do it and we're too big to fail. And people just don't understand how that works. All right. I'm off my high horse. Final thoughts, Sarah, 1 minute here.
Well, this is, like you said, we have to be the adults in the room. And this is where the public needs to be engaged on the reality of how our budget is made up, what the cost of doing business is as a state, and the consequence for these decisions. And I think that's where a lot of the legislature are struggling, is that the public isn't caught up to the reality of where we are, but it's our job to communicate that to you. So I just want to say to all of your listeners and to the people on the chat, I love you because you're paying attention. And I hope that you have a good morning. You crazy people who are up so early and working hard, I appreciate you.
Say hi to Mike Shower. He's on with us right now. So say hi to Mike.
Hey, Mike. Well, he's going to take
Good
the reins
morning.
from here and give a very impressive interview. So
Yeah, well, he's gonna rip and tear. I think we're gonna have some good times. All right. Well, Sarah Vance, thank you so much for coming on board and joining us. We appreciate you being part of it today. Thanks for coming in.
bye, Michael.
All right, Mike. I heard you're all good to go. You ready?
Oh, sure.
Oh, the enthusiasm is just amazing. All right, here we go. We're going to jump into it. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We return. Hour 2 is dead ahead. Let's do this thing.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on that thing we call the internet, and around the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning, my friends, and welcome back to the Michael Dukes Show, the Wednesday edition of the show. This is the final broadcast week for 2024. I know I keep mentioning that, but I don't want people to show up on Monday and be surprised when there's alternate programming wherever you are and whatever you're listening to, because we will be on vacation starting next Monday and going all the way through the first of the year, meaning that our first day back will be January the 2nd, Thursday, January the 2nd, 2025. Now, that's a big 10-day window for me because I am going to be working to stand up these radio stations here where we're taking over the stations on the 1st, but we're putting all new equipment and systems and automation and everything else in, and it's a hot dumpster fire is what it is. I am 15 hours a day, struggle bus all day long right now. So I've got another 10, 15 days to get all this together. So I'm going to be busy working, probably take Christmas Eve and Christmas Day off, and the rest of the time it's going to be busy. But I'll be back bright and early on the 2nd of January, and we'll be ready to go. All right, hour 2, we just finished up with Sarah Vance, our guest here on the program, for talking about election reform. She's got a hearing tomorrow at 1 p.m. at the Anchorage LIO office. You can view the hearing live at akleg.gov, akleg.gov. And you can watch that hearing. It'll be on election reform. It's going to be a question and answer session with the Division of Elections on the problems from this last election. But right now, to talk about that, the budget, more, whatever we feel like, it's State Senator Mike Shower. He joins us this morning to talk about, again, whatever we want to talk. There's really never a format when we bring Mike on. It's like, hey, this is good. It's good. All right. So, Mike, good morning, my friend. Merry Christmas. How are you?
Well, Merry Christmas. Yeah, it's free-form Friday with us every time.
Yeah, every time. Yeah, it's just it's freewheeling, whatever we want to talk about and everything else. So I know that you're hot and heavy on the election reform. I don't know if you were up early listening to Sarah all the way through or not, but I know that you did hear the last part there where we were talking about the budgets and stuff. So where do you want to start this morning? What should we talk about?
Well, let's see. The first thing is, based on your schedule, I'm glad you said that because I was not planning on talking to you next Wednesday morning during Christmas morning.
Yeah, well,
and two, I may be on vacation the week after that, for when you start anyway.
Oh,
so
okay. Well,
your timing is good for the next 2 weeks when I was going to blow you off regardless.
yeah. Hey, thanks for that. And at least you were going to
Just
send
wanted
me
to let you know how much I care.
yeah, you were going to send me a text at 11 the night before. By the way, I can't make it. Yeah, thanks. I appreciate
Well,
that.
that's what I usually do, isn't it? About 11:59, p.m. I go, hey Mike, sorry, I can't do it. See you.
I always wonder. I always wonder if you schedule those texts. Is he scheduling those texts specifically to hit me when he knows that I'm going to be asleep, or is it?
Do I have a reminder set in my phone? Maybe, but you'll never know.
Oh,
I'll never tell.
All right. Well, good. Well, then this is the last one for this year, and it'll be another 3. It'll be 3 weeks from now that we'll bring you back on and chit chat about what's going on, which is right before the session kicks off. So that should be we may have some interesting developments in the future to see where things are going. All right. Well, Mike, again, there's a lot on the plate here, and Brad Keithley was on fire on Tuesday, talking about the governor's budget and what's come out. And of course, it's come out since we talked last. And I'm going to agree with Brad. I'm disappointed because I thought that although Mike did some good things in there, trying to focus on the statutory PFD, he did say during his press conference that, hey, you want to put all this stuff in there. How do we, how do we pay for it? How do you propose to pay for these programs that you and everybody anticipates are going to be introduced and still have a PFD, still have a state trooper force, still plow the roads? I mean, he did at least highlight that, but this 10-year plan and this budget that he's put forward, I don't think it fulfills his mandate, his statutory mandate as a governor, because it's supposed to be sustainable. And I don't know if you're just running a household budget or if you've ever run a business budget, but you don't write a budget basing the balancing on it on a finite savings account or a resource or something like that, because it's not sustainable. What is your thought as you look at this?
Well, I mean, you just asked the question, have I ever had to run a household budget or a business budget or even a military budget? I mean, no, I always just spend what I want. And as long as there's checks in the checkbook, I assume there's money and I write them freely.
Right.
Sarcasm emoji alert. No, I mean, look, maybe I haven't had a chance to sit down and talk with the governor yet. I'm sure him and I will discuss this robustly the first chance we get to sit down and talk. But I don't know enough of what was going through Mike's mind to really be able to comment or speak for him. Maybe he's trying to make that point with the budget, Michael, by putting the statutory PFD and the other things in there. And I'm only theorizing because, like I said, I haven't talked to him, so I really can't. It's hard for me to comment on what Mike was thinking or why they did it the way they did, unless, like I said, maybe one avenue is trying to make the point that by the time you do this with all the spending that has increased for so many years now, that we're going to break the bank. I mean, you and I have talked about that. And I think I've mentioned that, I don't know, somewhere in the last few months, said, fine, just do it. Break the bank now. Just go ahead and spend everything, spend us into oblivion and show everybody how much this government has increased, regardless of what the Democrats and a handful of Republicans say, regardless of what the unions say and all the lobbyists, and just show them. So look, you're going to take every single penny of the permanent fund earnings. There's going to be no dividend. You're going to focus it all on the state, forever the state, right? And you're going to give every single penny to the state and state workers. That's going to be your focus. Forget the private sector economy. What private sector economy? And break it. Sometimes maybe that's the best answer. And I'm not saying that's what he's doing. And I'm not even sure that's the best plan, because the best plan would be for us to solve it with a fiscal policy that was comprehensive and balanced, right? We've been talking about that for years here now. But if you can't get there with the legislature that is intransient and just wants to spend more money anyways and take all the dividend, because all it seems like a majority of them want is to give all the money to the unions and the state, and you're the governor that is never able to get much beyond that except some line item vetoes, I don't know, Michael, maybe that's the plan. Break it. He's got 2 years to do it. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I guess my thought is you're a lame duck governor. What do you have to lose? I mean, it's not like the legislature has to follow your budget. We've seen that in the past where governors produced a budget and the legislature said, that's nice, we're going to do our own. And then they don't
do that anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, so the governor could have at least pointed a direction and said, here's the problem. We're $1.7 billion in the hole for next year. And so here's where I'm recommending that we take the state and in cuts to fix this, not just next year, but every year thereafter. We're into $1 billion budget deficits. 25, 30, 33% of the budget is in deficit. So I'm going to go ahead and put together a plan that would fix that. Now, again, he's got nothing to lose, right?
You're right, but the way the budget is structured now, even if Mike came in like he did years ago with, in his first year and had a significantly reduced budget, he was Hitler, and he was a right-wing white supremacist. He was the worst person on the earth that was going to literally, I believe it was Zach Fields or one of them said he was going to push, and didn't even get called by the press. He was going to literally push grandma out of the old person's home in a wheelchair and leave her on the side of the road, right? Everybody was going to get kicked out of their housing. Troopers were no longer going to answer the phone when you called with emergency. I mean, it was the end of the earth, Mike. It was the January 6th Babylon Bee movie that was so funny. That January 6th, the most deadliest day ever, even over World War II and Pearl Harbor and 9/11. I mean, with that kind of ridiculousness. And, they came back and restored most of them anyways. The veto overrides.
Right. That budget, that budget ended up being $80 million over the previous year, even though the governor had proposed cutting hundreds of millions of dollars. In the end, it was more than the previous year. I mean, so it really didn't do anything.
That's right. And what's the second part of the narrative? You and I both know, without even one iota of doubt, that their plan is going to be, now that you have a few Republicans that have joined and given Democrats control of both bodies who want nothing more than to spend more money, every penny they can get their hands on, and that means every penny currently available, and they are salivating at the chance of moving taxes through the body now because they want to get the man. The man's going to be the businesses and an anemic private sector that's barely holding on, and the man is also going to be you and me and every person that's actually working with a job, because they're going to come for the money. And if there's a dividend left after that, Michael, it's truly going to be real socialism, because it's going to be taking money from everybody's pockets and giving it to somebody else. The dividend is not that. I don't care what the stupid arguments you hear all the time. The dividend is a share of our resource wealth we have invested. It's like getting a stock dividend. Everybody, I've heard people so many times, people, oh, it's socialism. No, it's not. Investing your money and getting a dividend is not socialism. That's capitalism, brother. Learn the definitions. But what we're going to do to have a dividend moving forward, because they've spent it all, is going to be true socialism, where they're going to take money from people's pockets and literally redistribute it to somebody else. That's a definition of it. But you and I both know what the narrative is going to be. Oh, Dunleavy's got the supersized PFD. Here we go. It's a McDonald's supersized meal. That's what it is. And it's going to be a supersized PFD that we just can't afford. That's the reason. So cut that sucker, because that's what's going to cause the overspending, Michael. It's not all of the critical services that we need. It's all going to be about the dividend. You watch.
Right. But again, that's
the governor put it in, and maybe that's his point, Michael, is that's what they're going to do. They're going to spend it all and blame it on the dividend, take it from the people in the private sector. That's the focus. I don't know. And frankly,
that's a self-licking ice cream cone, because once the dividend's gone, they still have $1 billion deficits moving forward.
Of course, I know. So you and I know that.
So
your listeners are smart and they know that. So what do you do as the governor? Maybe you make the point. I don't know, Michael. Again, I'm theorizing because you're asking me to comment on why Mike did it as opposed to what he did.
I'm not looking. No. I'm actually asking what he did, and don't you think that as a mandate, as a statutory mandate, that the budget should have been more, I guess, austere, or more living within, or truly sustainable, instead of saying,
now I
go ahead.
I agree. So to be clear, I agree. And had I been there and having the circumstances in front of me that whatever he was presented with, maybe I would have done that differently. Maybe 7 years into my governorship, if I was there for 8 years, I'd be frustrated and I'd do something different and swing the hammer a different way. Again, I'm theorizing, Michael. Maybe that's why he did it. I don't know. I'll ask him. We get chance to sit down and talk. Maybe that's something we can discuss and say, why did you take this path as opposed to that one? I don't disagree with you that the best answer is to provide a budget that we can live with, but maybe there are other considerations for why he's doing it, knowing they're going to add it anyways, knowing they're going to add defined benefits or try to anyways, and other things that he's just going to have come back and veto anyways. I mean, maybe that's part of it. So I don't know. I don't disagree with you. I mean, look, the plan always should be to do how we started off in 2019, but then he got crushed for it, and they announced a recall, and he was the worst person ever. And so maybe he's just tired of playing that game 6 years and 7 years into it. I don't know. Could be.
Well, but right? I mean, he could be tired, but again, he's only got 2 years. I doubt a recall effort would
I don't think he cares
garner much traction at this point. So, I mean, at this point, again, my question is always, what do you got to lose? And that's where we're at right now. All right, we got to go. We're going to be back. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense, Liberty-Based, Free Thinking Radio.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
All right, State Senator Mike Shower is our guest. Yeah, Mike, I wasn't trying to get you to crawl inside Dunleavy's mind and figure out exactly what he's thinking. Yeah. I was just looking at it from as a governor. I mean, if I had 2 years left, lame duck, and everything else, I would be. And I'm looking at the path forward, and every year for the next 10 years in ad infinitum is, 28, 30, 33% deficit spending. I would have a hard message. I would be like, here's the thing: the next 10 years. Deficit spending, billions of dollars a year. Yet everybody's talking about wanting to increase spending, but we just don't have the money. And this is why my budget is this way. And putting out the budget and then letting the legislature see. The thing is, he could have let the legislature take the heat for this. He could have let the legislature, he could have given it to him and said, here's a budget. It lives within its means. It pays a full PFD while maintaining core state services or whatever. And, anything you do from here is yours, because here's the problem. We've got these deficits going out. I mean, this needs to be the hammer point. The deficits are going out for the next 10 years. And then it would have been their baby. See, by kind of soft selling it now, they'll be able to come back and say, well, we worked with the governor's budget and this, and maybe he's going to veto it. I don't know. But I'm just disappointed, and I'm frustrated because there doesn't seem to be many adults in the legislature who are willing to look at this and go, this can't continue. This is not sustainable by any. Even if we take the full PFD within a year or two, we're back to 100%, deficits and everything. I mean, somebody has got to be the adult in the room and say these things.
Who's willing to get unelected, Michael? Tell me that right now. Well, look at the legislature and you tell me. Hold on. Tell me who's willing to get unelected, because as I have told you, I've had many legislators tell me, well, if you don't spend government money, you don't have a constituency. In other words, the people that are going to reelect you are going to be people with money and means. It's going to be the big unions. It's going to be perhaps some people with money in their pockets, whoever that might be, on whatever theory you want to come up with. But if you don't play the game, your chances, there's some of us in certain districts that might be able to get reelected, regardless. And I'm telling you, as you and I know, because you've been in office, how politicians think, which is, how do I hold this seat? From the moment they get elected, they're still thinking, what do I got to do to get reelected in 2 to 4 years? That's how the mind works, because you want the seat. It may be in some cases you want to, get this policy or that bill through or whatever, but believe me, everything many of them do is always about, how do I get reelected? How do I make sure that the people see that I'm doing something? There's always that background music playing, if you will, of how do I make sure I keep the seat? And if you make angry the people that have the power, especially in certain districts, like the big unions with the big money and the others that are going to donate to help you win, then you find yourself in that boat going, man, it's going to be really hard to win, because somebody's going to come in and challenge me. That's going to say to every one of those potential donors and power players, absolutely, I'll do what you want. What do you need me to do? Get me in the seat. I'll help you out. So my point to you is, who is willing in the legislature, outside of a handful, to actually rip the Band-Aid off and do what has to be done?
Well, that's played out.
Take the heat.
Yeah. That's played out in this last election cycle, right? There was a whole bunch of people out there that were chicken in every pot people. You get a new car, you get a new car, you get you get a BSA increase, and you get a defined benefits program, and you get subsidies for oil and gas, and you get so we're seeing it play out. But again, I understand.
Who's the adult? I get it.
Yeah,
I know.
I
Who's the
understand.
adult in the legislature?
Yeah.
I have tried. I have put in over $2 billion when we told them up of reductions. Michael, I'm not sure I ever got a single one to that budget. And they get voted down every single time. And not just voted down a little. They get voted down a lot. Almost every reduction. I don't believe I may have ever gotten a single reduction I put in just trying to manage that year's budget.
Right.
Much less the combined effort we had for a fiscal policy that would finally balance this and make it work to be what you and Brad were talking about, sustainable long term.
Yeah.
Too few people have any interest in doing that. I don't know why.
Well, it's like you couldn't even get a few $1 million for empty positions. I mean, you couldn't even get that. I mean, what the hell, you know? All right, let's continue on. We're jumping back into it. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like, share this wherever you're watching it. Share it right now for me, please. Just mash that share button. Like it as well. Here we go.
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
No, yeah, that's right. Let's continue. State Senator Mike Shaw got a little heated there in the break, talking about who's going to be the adult in the room. And Mike points out that it's hard. I mean, this whole election cycle, we saw many of the people who were voted in were on the chicken and the pot platform, right? You get a BSA increase, and you get a defined benefits program, and you get a subsidy for the gas and the cook inlet, and you get a spending program here. And those are the people that got elected. I mean, we talked about people like Jesse Bjorkman and Ben Carpenter. Ben Carpenter working his fingers to the bone, trying to get a long-term fiscal plan into the state. You know, being the town crier, being the boy who said, hey, look, the sky is falling for real this time. And everybody goes, oh, look, we don't need that. And the smear campaign against him won in one of the reddest districts in the state. So Mike's not wrong that there's something institutionally happening here with the electorate, where the electorate's just not. I mean, I think there's a disconnect, Mike. Do they not understand? Are we so in Alaska so disconnected because we don't have some form of taxation that directly affects people, like at the end of the year or once a year in their paychecks or whatever? Are we so disconnected because the money comes in behind the scenes that we don't understand that when they said, here's your free stuff, that we are paying for that free stuff?
Yes.
Well,
did you want more of an answer?
I was just going to say that was pretty simple, but I mean, I think that's a big part of it, right? I mean, we're so different than any other state. We are an endowment state now, essentially, and we have no taxable income coming out of the people who vote, so they don't see it, they don't feel it. They, to them, and so they're like, oh, more free stuff, sign me up for that. And that goes back to that quote that I talked about the other day that I still can't remember if it was de Tocqueville or whoever it was, that said, woe be unto the republic when the public figures out they can vote themselves largesse out of the treasury. That's where we're at right now. They're like, oh, more free stuff, we're all good. Until it crashes.
Until, as Margaret Thatcher said, you run out of other people's money, which was a quote from somebody much before that, but she used it and she gets credit for it. And that's what you're talking about, until it crashes. And that's why I was just theorizing that maybe that's what the governor's doing. While we have a permanent fund corpus left, while we still are not completely upside down, maybe you try to burn it down now and see if there's a option to put the fiscal policy through. So I'm only theorizing. I get it. The best answer is to have that comprehensive fiscal policy. The best answer is to have a budget that is living within our means. I don't disagree with any of that. Maybe after 7 years, he's just frustrated and trying to take a different tack. I don't know. And I don't know if that's even the best path, but I'm just saying maybe he would. I mean, you and I talk that way sometimes. I've said that before. I'm like, look, if we're going to go down this path and just death by 1,000 paper cuts, let's just freaking cut the whole, just slice the body in half, just chop it off and be done. And then see if we still have something left to rebuild it up before it's too late. Because if you get to the point you're talking about with death by 1,000 paper cuts, Michael, by the time you realize it, by the time the government has to acknowledge it, by the time the people realize, oh my gosh, we're in, Ayn Rand's, Atlas Shrugged, and there's nothing left. It's been completely destroyed. It's too late to do anything about it. You're so far behind the power curve, to use aviation terms, you're going to stall and crash, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. Maybe the answer is to accelerate that while you still have some wealth and ability and some infrastructure, and you make it happen. And again, I'm not saying that's what the governor did or is doing, and I'm not even saying that's the best path. I'm saying that maybe that is an option, or maybe that's part of what he's trying to do. And I look at it sometimes myself, Michael, maybe that's better. Maybe you crash the train as soon as possible, while you still have tracks ahead of you, and you go off the cliff, and now you have a chance to rebuild the bridge, before it's too late. I don't know. These are just musings of us on a Wednesday morning, a week before Christmas. But your question about when will the people see this, the people themselves, because they're so cognitively distant from what's really happening, and I don't blame them, and that's not at all throwing any mud at the citizens, because they're going, you have very active people on this program. The people that listen here consistently probably care, and they're somewhat educated, and they're probably about most of the people in the state that actually care and pay attention. See, that's the point we got to realize. It's like 90 something plus % of all the citizenry don't care, don't pay attention, aren't interested. And it doesn't mean it's because they're, they don't get it. It means they are busy living their life, trying to get by. Politics doesn't matter to them per se, because it's not an interest, whatever, until it does. And that's the fallacy of that thought process, Michael, of not being involved, not talking about politics and religion around the dinner table with your family, friends, and kids, not getting involved, not going to community councils or assembly meetings or anything else. Because by the time you get so angry what happened that you're forced to do that, what you didn't want to happen has already happened. And not being involved gets us to this point, and not having 40 or 50 or 60%, you don't really need that much. If you had 15 or 20 or 25% of the population that was just fired up all the time and stayed engaged, we'd be in a different boat. But that's not what it is, Michael. It's 3 or 4 or 5% of the population at best.
Right.
Even those actually stays actively involved in the process.
Even those who've been screaming since 2016 for a full PFD, it wasn't a big enough slice, apparently. It wasn't a big enough slice to move the needle. I mean, we had 4-hour hearings where 99% of them were for paying a full PFD, and we got legislators that are like, well, that's nice, but we're still going to do our thing. I mean,
they got reelected, and a lot of them got reelected anyways.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just,
so who pays attention?
It's just not enough, is what you're saying, is that we're engaged on this program. Obviously, the listeners to this program are probably engaged, but the average person in the electorate doesn't. Kevin said we're caught in this trap because Alaskans don't understand where the cheese comes from. And that's exactly right. We don't understand where the cheese is coming from because we don't see it. It's a hidden stealth tax. It's taken from us before it ever hits our pocketbook.
That's what we just said, Michael. Over the last 3 or 4 minutes of us ranting here that's the issue. Not enough people see it until it's too late. And by the time they do see it, there's nothing they're going to do about it. They keep electing the same people because when the election cycle comes up, people that governed one way, took the PFD, voted for increased benefits and entitlements and all the other stuff, grew the government beyond a sustainable rate, come back and send out flyers and say, I was the man while I was down. I was cutting the budget and living within our means and all this stuff. And they completely lie a lot of the times. I mean, remember one last election cycle was Andy Josephson. And he was, I think it might've been this one or the 2 years ago. I can't remember which one. And I think it was this year. And he was saying, oh yeah, the Anchorage Police Union endorsed me. Look, in the high crime area. And they're like, no, we didn't. But it was too late. The lie was out. He'd already sent out the flyers.
Yeah.
And people believe it because they're not engaged. We just said that, right? Most people don't know, aren't engaged. And so they have no idea that Andy Josephson voted to take that stuff away.
Right.
And he wasn't endorsed by the police union, but the damage is done. It's like being a smart prosecutor or a smart defense lawyer, and you say that thing in front of the jury you're not supposed to say, and the judge goes, strike that. The jury will ignore what was just said. Yeah, right.
Right.
You just said it. And it's in people's minds, and you just introduced reasonable doubt or whatever the point was. And that's kind of what politicians do. They say things that aren't true. They say what they didn't do that they did do, or vice versa. And the people don't know any better and they believe it. And the same people get reelected, and you'll wonder why nothing really changes. And yes, I know. And I know I'm on a roll here for a second. I'm almost done. You said we've changed out a lot of players. We have. But have we really? Because a lot of the players we've changed out really are doing the same thing that the previous people did for the most part. Has it really changed? Has the district changed that much that they're electing somebody different? And are the people really getting involved and getting active? And the answer to that, you and I both know, like it or not, is it hasn't changed.
Right.
It
Well,
really hasn't.
and you mentioned earlier, I said, you said the engaged portion of the population may be 3 or 4%, and what we really need is 20%. And you know what we have today that is more than 20% in the state? We've got a special interest that is people who work for some form of government, municipality, state, federal, whatever. And as long as their economy is clicking along, they'll vote for that special interest. They're okay. And so we're already fighting against a 20-25% special interest group out there that is that's doing it. So, I mean, we've got an uphill battle.
I want, and I don't know if there's like Kevin's on here, or one of the other legislators maybe, or somebody that's really remembers the number. I want to say if you did the Alaska state government, municipalities, boroughs, etc., excluding federal, because it's a little different, because federal, is obviously looking at DC for money and benefits, etc. But I want to say if you did everything inside the state, excluding federal, it was something like and don't forget the university, right? They're kind of quasi-government employees too, is something like 35,000, 37,000. It may be more than that. I can't remember, but it's not a small number when you consider the size of our very anemic workforce, because again, we're not a big state population wise. We don't have like a big industrial base or anything else. So it's a pretty big number percentage wise of people that are looking at the government and going, feed me, redivert money to me. And I'm okay with that. And that is a lot of people. And look, let's be clear. Let's be frank. Not every person working for the government is a left winger, is a, union hack. Right. So there are there are really good people in government. So I will not broad brush it, just like we always, whether the teachers, well, no, there are great teachers. I know a lot of them. There's some very conservative ones. We have some that are good friends of ours, but they are outnumbered by those that are on the left side of the political spectrum. They're outnumbered by the unions and the power and the money the unions bring to bear. And so, just like when you talk about judges, there are some good conservative judges in this state, but they're very careful. There's some very good there's a handful of those, but there are some very good conservative lawyers. They're not going to out themselves. The second they do, the chance of them ever getting to be a judge, the chance of them ever winning court cases in front of the very liberal judges we have, it's terrible. So why would you put your lifeblood at risk for that, right? So yes, Michael, the constituency of the government employees is very large. That is a hard thing to overcome. But don't forget, it's not just that. The regular unions, and I'm talking not the union people, back to the same thing, don't broad brush them. Unions are full of great guys and a lot of good workers that are, red-blooded Americans. The line worker out there doing stuff, he's probably a patriot, right? Probably loves his country.
Right.
But when you get to the upper echelons of the union, it is about two things to them, Michael: money and power.
Yeah.
Period. Doc. And we see that all the time. And they are a big part of the political machine in this state. They have big influence in who gets elected and who doesn't. When you talk about that, I have been hammered by the unions both times I've ran campaigns up here. Put all kinds of money into other people and trying to stop me and others like me, right? Why? They don't want us in there. We want to balance the budget, which means it's going to be reductions to money that people they want having money in their pocket by getting the other politicians to give them more money, because that goes in their pocket for what? More money, more power, which is what they're after. So, Michael, I don't know. This is a vexing problem, because how do you rip that Band-Aid off without people screaming, like even some supposedly fiscally conservative Republicans were, the troopers weren't going to answer the phone, that essential services were going to stop, the roads weren't going to be plowed. It's the Washington Monument Syndrome. Every time we try to do anything like that to get back within reason, like the regular average Alaskan citizen has to do to balance their checkbook, or they get in big trouble, then it becomes the nightmare scenario.
Right.
Everything's going to stop. It's going to be the worstest day ever, right? Using that English on purpose. It's going to be worse than January 6th, the deadliest day ever. So I don't know, Michael, because I don't know how to get past that. Every time we've tried, we just get slaughtered. And the press jumps on the bandwagon with them. Well, you just want to stop essential services, and you just want to buy a supersized PFT. I can predict that. You and I right now can predict the headlines and the narrative and what the House and Senate majorities are going to say. Let's do it. We can do it right now. Exactly. Oh, it's going to be the supersized PFT. Oh, they just want to give away more money, and they just want to raise taxes so they can give away a PFT, and they want to stop essential services because write the narrative right now for the next 2 years, because we've been living it for the last 6 or 7. I can tell you what they're going to say.
Mike Shower is our Mike Shower.
You asked.
I did ask. Total numbers, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics for the state of Alaska, about 80,000 combined government employees. Between the state and the local, they account for about 60,000, 65,000.
It's more than I thought. Yeah, I knew it was a big number.
Of the 80,000, state and local governments account for about 60 to 65,000, depending on the time of year. Of the total labor workforce, which is only 356,000 people. So it's a huge number. You wonder now why some of the things swing the way that they swing. All right, we got to move here. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, State Senator Mike Shower joins us. I don't know what we'll talk about. Maybe more politics, or maybe it's Christmas. I don't know. We'll see where it goes.
Christmas time.
It's Christmas. Mike is in favor of Christmas. All right, we're going to be back in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes.
Allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we're on the break right now. Mike Shower is our guest. We can wind it down. We can wind it down.
But we can also talk elections a little bit, because I know you did with Sarah,
yeah.
And I had suggested to her, Ben. But I just, we'll get hot on the election stuff next year, and I think that there are some key things that have happened since the election cycle this time. One of them was the court case, as I highlighted a week or two ago, a couple of weeks, about the Fifth Circuit Court ruling that accepting ballots after Election Day is a violation of federal law. That's now been ruled in circuit court. That's something that we need to hammer on, and I'm going to push the AG and the lieutenant governor and the administration. We need to launch this. We need to change it, because we can't violate federal law. So we need to fix that. The voter rolls we know about. There's some things people have seen it, and more people at least are waking up to that. So maybe we'll get to a point where we can change some stuff, because clearly, we know and acknowledge without any question that there are problems. So that is one thing that we cannot stop on, because look, all other things hinge on it, Mike. It's like we've talked about the debate on certain things. I'm focused on, how do we select our judges? Let's go back to selecting our judges the way the founders intended, which is the way the Constitution is written of the state, which is the lower three courts are supposed to have some process of approval through the legislature. We don't do it. Well, if we want to have conservative judges and constitutionalist judges also not be afraid to put their name in, we're going to have to change how we select that so they don't get crushed, right? So that's one thing that's important. And if you don't change your judges, because we seem to bow down to the judiciary as the penultimate at the end of the process, whatever they say goes, well, then if we don't have the courage to face the judiciary when they do things like the judge did this last time on homeschooling, the judge years ago on the unilaterally just mail out ballots and say it's fine and break the law, well, then we're never going to fix the system, and we're never going to get past some of the things we want, because like when we do, Scott Kendall and his groups in the Northern Justice Project will come in and sue the state, and we'll go, okay, sorry, and we won't do it. So we're going to have to fix some things and have some long game strategy here, Michael, or we'll never get there. And elections are part of it, right? If we don't have good, secure elections, then you have no foundational republic, because anybody could cheat. They could swing elections by a few hundred votes. How tight, we talked about that. How tight was the vote to repeal ranked choice voting? Funny that we have several 100,000 Alaskans data floating around, and all you would have to do is look back a few years and pick a couple thousand of those that have never voted, request an online voter or an online ballot, which is legal in this state. I'd love to stop that. Use some of those voter identifiers you bought off the dark web, sign that sucker, because we don't check signatures, turn it in, and oh, look how many, there were several thousand, I understand, ballots that came in that just had no on to and Mary Peltola. Nobody else on the ballots that when they came in. Oh, that's kind of interesting and not statistically generally possible. So am I claiming fraud? No. Am I saying the possibility of fraud was high? Yes, it could have been. We just don't know. And we were never going to do that forensic audit I've asked for. So as we had before we get into the Christmas fun of the last segment, I just want to say there are some issues that are important. They haven't changed. I'm as frustrated as you guys are. The budget's just one more of many issues that we need to fix. But some of those long range items, Michael, we've got to fix, because without securing your state with good elections, without having a judiciary that's not going to overrule every good thing you do, it's going to be hard to win some of these battles, right? We can fight in the legislature all day long to get good bills and just watch the Supreme Court strike it down, or just out of thin air create a right to abortion that doesn't exist in the Constitution. So it's not just pass a bill. It's not just have a good budget this year. We need to be thinking long term on some of these things, or we're never going to be able to hold the line. That's my last pitch for 2024.
That's my last pitch for 2024 is the thing. All right. Well, elections are important, and as we talked about earlier in the hour, even the appearance of impropriety, or the slight whiff of possibility of some kind of malfeasance is a problem, right? I mean, that's the whole thing, and so we can't undermine the confidence in the elections. And there's a lot of people out there who have lost kind of that confidence, and we need to do something about it. So hopefully we'll see what goes on there.
Well, yeah. There'll be small steps, whatever they are, because we're not going to do anything big. I can tell you that right now. Not with the body as it stands today. So,
all right. Well, I will. I guess we'll start off just with your final thoughts on elections, and then if you want to just go into your Christmas plans and what we're cooking, what we're eating, what we're doing, that'd be great. We can finish it up on a happy note. That would be fine.
I like that plan.
Yeah, absolutely. Anthony, I think you meant a non-zero chance. It's a non-zero chance. There you go. All right. Just appointing judges, says Frank, but the Dems are in lockstep, whereas the Link Party, they just consume each other. Well,
yeah, I don't want to appoint them. I have a different process. We talked about that bill for years now. I can highlight it again, but that's a different thing. So.
Yeah. All right, let's continue on here. Mike Shower is our guest. We're going to jump back into it with one final segment. Again, there's only 19 likes on this morning, and there's 70-something people watching. If you guys could just thumbs up it, like it, love it, hate it, whatever, let's interact and get it done. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
Guy is so mean, man. So mean. Mike Shower's our guest. One final segment. Mike wanted to take a final crack at elections since we talked about it with Sarah, and it's something that he's been working on since he got into the legislature. So we'll get his final thoughts on that before we turn to something more fun, a little Christmassy stuff. So Mike, elections, take it away.
So Fifth Circuit ruled back in October that it's illegal to count ballots after Election Day. That's one thing we need to fix. Right now, the state is operating, as others are too, that will hopefully change it, in violation of federal law. So that's something I'm going to ask the Attorney General, Lieutenant Governor to help me with. That's something I hope the legislature will not fight back against, because we need to move the entire timeline to the right to be in accordance with federal law. That would allow us to get all the ballots by election night, and then we can start that counting and get them done and have those results out faster. And if we get rid of ranked choice voting next time around, then we'll really have the results faster, like other states that are many times our size that somehow could announce their election results on the night of the election, strangely enough. So there's even some out there doing hand counts and with the paper ballots, et cetera. So we can do better. There's a lot. We don't have enough time to talk through it all, but those same things, cleaning up the voter rolls, other stuff like that. Michael, I'm still going to try again. I know others will. Sarah Vance and others, I'm sure. I hope they will. Still going to file the judicial bill. I'm not looking to appoint the judges, because they'd say, oh, that's a political process, even though it is in the U.S. Senate. And that's how they do it, right? But I've merely suggested that the lower three courts, in accordance with the state constitution, that says all other courts except for the Supreme and the Superior, as prescribed by law, that's us, the legislature. All I suggested was we give the governor a couple choices in addition to what the bar provides. They're just all vetted by the Judicial Council, and those lower three courts merely have to go through an up or down vote by the legislature so it can weed out the far extremists on every side, and we get to constitutional judges. There's nothing wrong with that. It's in accordance with the Constitution. That would allow all judges of all stripes to not be afraid to put their name in, which was the goal. And like I said, it's in line with the Constitution. So I'm going to try again, although I'm sure that this legislature with a bunch of Democrats that are in lockstep with the judges and the judicial branch, so it seems to me, will probably fight it and shoot it down. But I will try. And, and then we're back to the fiscal policy. We'll keep trying on all of these things, Michael, but I don't see a lot of movement because I don't see the change in personality types, party affiliation, ideological stance that's going to change what has happened in the last 6, 7, 8 years. So
right.
Don't expect anything big. This is probably going to be, if nothing, at the end of the day, more hopefully just stopping the bad than doing much good. But there's always options, Mike. Some of those folks might be, I'm already talking to a few Democrats on some of the election stuff that is the non-contentious stuff that Chris Tuck and I had in the bill years ago that we got all the way to the floor, had to kill it in the last hour of the 2-year session. And there are some things that are not particularly contentious that both sides could go, this is a win, like cleaning up the voter rolls that nobody really argues with. They always try to Christmas tree it with their own stuff, but if they'll be willing enough to do these things and stay neutral on their political stuff, which I would be willing to do to get something through, like clean voter roll cleanup that we all acknowledge needs to happen, we might be able to get a few things through that I could look at the governor and go, hey, man, hey, big guy, let it through. It's good. As opposed to having to run to Mike at the end and go, Mike, please veto it because it's garbage. Like was what happened last year. So we'll see.
There's
about, always chance.
What about removing the PFD automatic registration, voter registration?
Well, look, I mean, I could put the bill in too, but you're going to need the governor, you're going to need the administration to swing on that one. Like, I don't have the horsepower to get anything like that through because too many Democrats like it, because the Democrats and maybe some in the moderate side of things politically, I'm talking Republicans and Democrats, see that as an advantage. There is no doubt that they want everybody to be registered because then their goal ultimately, and regardless of what they tell you, if they say anything different, they're not being honest. Their goal is mass registration and mass mail-out balloting. That's what they want to do. That's their end state of everywhere they're going with this. Don't believe anything else they say because that's the goal. They want to be like Oregon because once you do that, Michael, you will win because it gives you all the options you need for getting certain things done, to include fraud. With ballots that they realize that this person has never voted, turn that one in, ballot harvesting, all the stuff. The ultimate goal is mass mail-out balloting across the country, no requirement for any type of ID whatsoever, and national popular vote. That's their ultimate goal, because once they get there, if they can establish that and or ranked choice voting with it across the nation, we will truly become a uniparty. Democrats control the political landscape. They can control the country. And based on their ideological stance and what we've seen out of them in the last 10 years, how's that going to work out for us as a nation?
No,
that will be the death knell of America. It'll be over.
Yeah. So. All right. Well, can we lighten it up now?
That's enough doom and gloom, my friend.
Holy
we need to
cow.
talk about Christmas. That was bad.
Yeah, that was like, that was boom. That was a big one. So what's your big Christmas traditions? What's your big Christmas plans this year, Mike?
Well, we always try to do church on I was going to say Thursday night. Like, for some reason, that's Spanish Christmas. It's not even Thursday this year. On Christmas Eve, we try to go do a candlelight church service because those are always really cool. And I really enjoy that. And it's kind of just sets the mood for our family, that the spiritual side of Christmas and the songs and reading the stories. It just kind of sets that baseline to me for what it means and what it's really about. And then, of course, Christmas morning, waking up when you can. So those days where you get up relatively early are kind of dead because, we don't have any young kids in the house. And we have the grandkids, but by the time they do their stuff with their mom and dad, our kids, it's already later in the day. So Michelle and I don't have to do the, 6 o'clock, here comes the feet, running through the house. Uh-oh, they're up. They've been awake for 2 hours sitting there going, Santa. So unfortunately, we don't have that anymore, but we still, by the time, we're up and doing our thing, then the kids come over later and we do the second Christmas, if you will. And that's always fun because we have our, you get to open presents and you get to sit back as the grandparents and watch all that stuff. Because that's really the fun part to me. I don't care about getting anything. It's great when I get something. It doesn't matter. I like to watch people the joy on people's faces when they open the presents and what they get and things that they were hoping for. And that just provides all the happiness I ever need, really, for that, truly. Right. And then, of course, later in the day, it's all about the ham and the turkey. And yes, we're going to go there. Mashed potatoes or rice. I don't care what any of you people say. If you say rice, you're dead to me. I'm done. Don't even talk to me. It's mashed potatoes and gravy, or I'm sorry, you are anti-American.
Right, but
I don't know what you are. You're an alien. You're not from here.
I think in full disclosure, you guys do have both mashed potatoes and rice, though, for you, don't you?
Yes, we have to, because I have those intransient, un-American, unpatriotic weirdos in my family that say rice is what you eat for Christmas dinner, and I don't even know what to do with them anymore. I just don't know.
Right.
I don't know what to do with them. I just kick them out. You're out of the will. You're gone.
You're
dead to me.
You're gone. If we eat rice one more time, you're all disowned. That's what it's all.
It's mashed potatoes and gravy, people. What is your problem? I don't get it.
We're obviously doing a ham. We got a really nice ham for the Christmas for my dad's brown sugar bourbon ham that I normally make every year.
I know, it sounds amazing.
It is amazing. And Terry's actually making some new stuff this year. She wants to try out a few new things, which I thought was very adventurous of her, as busy as we are here trying to get everything done. But we'll do the mashed potatoes. Usually it's a sour cream garlic mashed potatoes. And then my daughter is making a fresh Parmesan Yukon golden fingerling potatoes au gratin on top of it.
Oh, au gratin's always a good one.
Yeah, so that's always good. And what do you do for the sweets? What do you do for do you do pies? Do you do cakes? What's the dessert look like on your Christmas?
So there's one more thing that is a very important key ingredient. That's the green bean casserole. Just to say that's one of the things I love. Green bean casserole. Michelle makes an amazing stuffing that she does by hand. It's her old family recipe, and it's just one of those things. She's the one of those. Not everybody does it, but she cooks it inside the turkey, right, and then brings it out so it's nice and moist, and then with the gravy on it, it's just like buh. So you can't forget the important ones. Okay, sweets. Michelle, usually we don't do cakes much with that. That's more like a birthday thing around here, but she does different pies, usually like apple pie or one of those kind of things. And sometimes some of the other kids will bring over like a pumpkin pie or something, so probably if we were to lean for the dessert, it'd be more like pies. Now, Michelle loves to bake, so she does a lot of cookies this time of year, but that's usually not a part of like the Christmas bake dinner.
That's the before dinner. That's the before dinner snack. Is all the cookies. Yeah, no, exactly.
That's to keep you going on the sugar high all day, baby. So you don't run out of energy. Yeah, we were probably more pie people at the end of the day, pie and ice cream or whipped cream, because Michelle makes her own whipped cream too, and so that's probably what we do. And then when that's all done and we're sitting there, all fat, dumb, and happy, as the saying goes, and full of food and tired, we usually start playing games. We play card or dice or something with the kids and the adults that sitting at the table for the last till we're done, and then when everybody gets tired, then everybody goes home. So we'll usually sit and play games and whatever they are of different types until everybody's tired at the end of the day, and that's our finish, if you will, is to play the board and dice games at the family.
We always do, of course, the pumpkin pie, because that's Grandma Faye's pumpkin pie, which is delicious. It's a big chiffon.
Love pumpkin pie.
It's a big chiffoned, light and fluffy pumpkin pie. And then my wife does a coconut custard pie. I think she's going to do pecans this year. And of course, like you said, all the cookies. Got to get all those cookies in. Secret Kiss cookies, kolaches, church windows. Yeah, it's going to be a diabetic coma for Christmas. Mike Shower is our guest.
Merry Christmas, everybody, and have a happy New Year. And we'll talk in a few weeks. You guys take care of yourselves.
All right.
Then my pleasure.
Thanks.
Talk to you guys.
Thanks so much. All right, folks, we're out of time for today. Tomorrow, Senator Dan Sullivan in hour 1, followed by Chris Story talking more property taxes in hour 2. The Michael Duke Show. Man, now I'm looking forward to Christmas dinner. That's what it's all. Green bean casserole with bacon and sometimes extra mushrooms. That's the thing right there. Green bean casserole with extra mushrooms and bacon. It just doesn't get much better than that.
The green bean casserole and the stuffing alone, I can eat that probably. And the mashed potatoes are gravy. I'm not even sure I need the turkey and ham. So
Forget the protein. Just give me all the carbs. Just give me all the carbs that I could take. All right. Well,
it's only like twice a year. How bad can it be, right?
Yeah.
Thanksgiving and Christmas. How we do it all the time.
How bad can it be? All right, Mike Shower. Thank you, my friend. It's good to talk with you. I hope you have a very Merry Christmas and enjoy your time, downtime, whatever downtime you're getting. And then we'll see you guys. We'll see you, I guess, the third week. So that makes it, what does that make it? January the 15th, I guess. We'll see you. That'll be right.
Sounds right.
That'll be right before the start on the Tuesday start. So we'll do that. And any final thoughts before we go?
Nope. I think that's it, brother. It's been a great time talking with you as usual. Merry Christmas to everybody. Have a great, happy New Year. Be safe out there, and we'll see what 2025 brings. It's going to be positive on the national front with the new president, new administration. So there's hope. So keep your fingers crossed. We'll see how it goes. But you guys take care, and we will talk to you in about 3 weeks.
All right. Merry Christmas, my friend. We'll talk to you soon. All right,
Bye.
folks. That's it for me. I'm done for today. Well, with you. I got a long day ahead of me. We will see you guys tomorrow. Be kind, love one another, live well.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.